at it in a stance of like, I don't necessarily need your money. There are other things that I would rather have. It's not about your money. It's like, what else are you giving? What else are you bringing other than your bag? You bringing your money to me doesn't necessarily make me happy. It doesn't necessarily satisfy my wants and desires. Yeah, it can make life easier on some level for things money can buy. But there are other things, emotional support, that's necessary when you're talking about being in relationships. So I don't subscribe to that hypergamy, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so let me ask you a quick question before I move on to Miss Polly. So are you saying you get a guy that works at Walmart? Shout out to all the Walmart employees, anybody who works at Walmart. It's not a dig it. But a guy who makes, 40,000, 38,000, 40,000, you saying that doesn't matter to you as long as he has a good heart and he's a good person.
So what did you just say?
Go across and finally end with Hanifah before we move on to the next segment. So historically, women didn't have access to the kind of education and career opportunities that men had access to. So it made sense for a lot of women back then to engage in hypergamy. But given that women today are likely to have more education than men, earn at least as much, if not more than men, especially those who are under age 30, have their own bank account. Some of them own their own homes. Does it make sense for modern women to still engage in the practice of hypergamy? Your thoughts, Maud?
So I struggle with, maybe I should have said this before, but I struggle with the definition of modern women versus traditional women. So when we're talking about modern women, like, what are we actually talking about when we say modern women? What's the definition of that?
Right. So, and I guess I should have used, women of today, women in modern times, because you're right. We do use this term modern women vis-a-vis traditional women. So I should have used women in modern times. So I'm talking about today's women.
Okay. Gotcha.
For the point of this line of questioning.
All right. So what you're asking is, because women have education, they have their own bank account, should they continue to be hypergamous?
Right. Does it make sense to? Because
I don't believe in hypergamy as it is. I think it's just like I think Hanifah said, I don't know, maybe we call it something else. I believe in security, right? So I think that looks different for different women. So should women continue to be hypergamous if they have all of that? I guess not, because we're talking about survival when we really think about it. Mm-hmm. Why were women hypergamous in a sense to begin with? That's because it was something that had to do with survival. Mm-hmm. And now that women have those certain things, and we have those certain things because a lot of conversations were had where, you need to get your own and things like that, because there are women who really want to be housewives. They want to be 100% taken care of, but as far as women being hypergamous, I don't really believe in hypergamy, and I guess maybe I'm like Hanifah, I struggle with it, because even when we talk about hypergamy I just struggle with I do struggle with hypergamy, but I struggle with it mainly because who are we attempting? What society are we attempting to
that are we discussing? We're discussing the West, our society that we live in. Let's focus on that for right now.
Okay, so we're talking about our society and if women should be hypergamous in this society. Well, as long as we place our values in certain things and we continue to put our value in the capitalistic society and things like that, I think we're going to continue to have these conversations. I think we're going to continue to see hypergamous. And then if men, a lot of times women are following men's suit. So if men are saying, I want hypergamous women, then that's what women are going to try to be.
No, I don't think I don't think a lot of men are saying I want hypergamous women. Like I said, if most men, like most human beings, will take the path of least resistance. So if a woman is going to get with me, if I can get a Holly Berry and I make $13 an hour, then
I'm basing it on, because I think Ray said it on the last show that he thinks hypergamy is a good thing, correct?
Yeah, he said.
But you're saying you're saying he's an extreme.
No. So what? Okay, to that extent, what he's saying is that that women should be hypergamous because you should want a man who is able to provide for you financially, because he's looking at it from an evolutionary standpoint where hypergamy represents security. That's how he's looking at it. So he's saying that he wouldn't advise women not to be hypergamous, right? So
I think you're being nice.
No, I
don't think he really said it that way.
No, but that is his position. That's his position, and he also believes that hypergamy motivates men to work hard, and it's the truth, because everything that we do for women, like from drug dealers to guys going to college, man, everything you do to get the girl, and if you don't have to do anything to get the girl, show me a guy who all he has to do is have a big package and put it down in the bedroom, and that's all it takes for him to get the girl and get. He might not have much motivation to do much else because he knows he has that to fall back on. So when women are hypergamous, and they want a man to be able to provide certain things, men strive and push themselves to go out and I don't want to say high value, or just to earn, have enough means to give themselves options to get the kind of women that they otherwise probably don't feel like they would have access to. But real question, I did have a quick question for you before I move on to Doc. So you don't believe, because like most women tend to marry across and up in terms of social hierarchies, and most men tend to marry across and down. Do you disagree with that? You don't feel like most women tend to either marry someone who makes as much as they do or more?
No, I do agree with that. I'm saying that, it kind of depends, because we're talking about social circles. So a lot of times because of our social circles, we are involving ourselves with people who are in that same, that same group. So the thing is we know that men are more physical creatures, and women, when we talk about the physical features and things like that, women are not necessarily as particular, because a woman will fall in love with someone who, because of their spirit, their energy, because he treats her well or whatever. But men are like, no, you gotta look a certain way. Not saying that men won't, but for the most part, we're not looking at each other the same way. So the thing is the only reason I say I don't particularly believe in hypergamy is because if we are continuing to be if you want women to be hypergamous, then you're only going to have to lead with that. And there's more to a relationship than just the money and resources. And then you have men who, for an example, who think that's all that they have to bring to a woman are their resources, are their money. But what else are you providing? Can you provide the other types of security that a woman may need? A woman can make a good decision based on all of the other aspects. It doesn't have to be just money or resources, because and as you know, I'm coming from the Black woman perspective, when as Black women that we really didn't work. A lot of us really never just historically sat at home and just did nothing. Even the ones who were primarily home, who stayed at home, a lot of them still maybe went and cleaned houses or did something of that, did things like that. So, I think that when we talk about like women being hypergamous, I think that we're not talking about us for the most part historically. We're talking about us now because we are constantly trying to be like another group. We're trying to be like another people in this society.
Doc, same question. This question's for everybody on the panel. I mean, why would women still be hypergamous given the fact that they making all this money? They taking trips, buying $2,000 purses and $500 shoes and $600 hairdos. I mean, you got that money. Why do you need a man who makes more than you? I mean, you got a lot of money. Why can't men and women be equal? That's the argument that women have made. So I'm just asking you.
You're so messy. So to your question of why, should a woman be hypergamous? Just because a woman is doing well, maybe more financially sound in that regard, to be able to handle all of their affairs, right? They want to go on trips, they want to do X, Y, and Z, they want, all those things. So that doesn't necessarily make a woman not want to be with someone. If we're talking about the social aspects of this, that doesn't make her not want to be with someone, I guess, along the lines of her social status So I don't think it's a matter of whether or not the woman should be a hypergamous based all because she has this and she has that. I don't, because again, as I stated before, I do believe in resources. However, I do also know that, like, you can't expect for one to engage in a relationship of any sort without there being some uplifting of some sort. Meaning, we're coming together and we're making each other better. Not you're coming into my life and I'm going down, or what I had, I no longer have because I've been engaged with you and it's taken away. Bringing us together should be an increase of things, not this decrease, in my opinion. And I'm looking at that from a stance of the comment that Hanifah made about homeless, they with the homeless. Who's with who, basically. But I also know I have friends, I have people who that's not necessarily the case. I come from a family. My parents, my mother made more money than my father. However, I watched my parents work together as a team to get things done. It wasn't just because my dad might not have made as much money as my mother or was not as educated as my mother that my mom lacked because my dad wasn't on her level. They still made things happen for my sisters and I, and we did pretty well. But I think Miss Polly made a comment about, people who are, getting together and, what that looks like and, conditions. And I have to go back to that because I think like there are still some form of condition in when you're dealing with another individual, male, female, doesn't matter. There's some form of a condition, right? Because that has to be something that satisfies your wants and your desires and what you're trying to accomplish. So that in itself brings on a condition of whether or not you're going to be with this person, work it out with this person, hang in there with this person. And so do I feel just because you got it, what appears like you have it going on, woman, like you're doing a lot for yourself, that does not necessarily mean that they don't want to have the help of a companion. Going back to what my aunt said, that companion of like, hey, can we, if we're going to be in this relationship together, let's bring our stuff together and better each other. So I already told you earlier, I don't subscribe to this hypergamous stuff. I believe in partnerships, and I don't necessarily think that because you're up here and your partner is down here socially, that means that you all can't have and can't do because of that, because you may lack in a certain area financially, but maybe you are handling things on another level, which we're speaking about finances, but it's more to it than just your money.
So let me ask you this question.
Far more to it than just your money, like literally. And I think I even said this before, right? I think it's no doubt that when I look at relationships and things, I'm looking at it in a stance of like, I don't necessarily need your money. There are other things that I would rather have. It's not about your money. It's like, what else are you giving? What else are you bringing other than your bag? You bringing your money to me doesn't necessarily make me happy. It doesn't necessarily satisfy my wants and desires. Yeah, it can make life easier on some level for things money can buy. But there are other things, emotional support, that's necessary when you're talking about being in relationships. So I don't subscribe to that hypergamy, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so let me ask you a quick question before I move on to Miss Polly. So are you saying you get a guy that works at Walmart? Shout out to all the Walmart employees, anybody who works at Walmart. It's not a dig. But a guy who makes 40,000, 38,000, 40,000. You saying that doesn't matter to you, as long as he has a good heart and he's a good person.
So what did you just say?
I'm saying you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. I'm saying if you got a guy right now that's watching this and he goes to work, to Walmart, and he's like, man, that PeachDr, I may have a chance. He's a good person. He only makes $38,000. You good with that?
That was a good try. That was a real good try, AK.
Oh, I'm just saying you don't have to answer it. I mean,
so one of the other things that we not discussed that have not been brought up in this conversation is I also believe in being equally yoked.
Well, you talking about equally yoked financially? Isn't that the same?
I believe in as much as possible in your mate about being equally yoked. It may not all be financial. No, I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm not.
Okay, but we were talking about finance and you brought up equally yoked. And it goes to the point that I was, the thing I mentioned to my aunt, that most women tend to date across and up, across in social hierarchies, across and up, and very seldomly tend to date or marry down.
I agree with that. That I can agree, and I understand. I can understand why that data is such. I get it.
Okay. Yeah, I was listening to where you were going, and so I had to ask you that question. Let me bring in Miss Polly. Miss Polly, women are they're doing pretty well right now. I mean, outside of the she session because of the pandemic, women are doing relatively well, right? If hypergamy is not innate, then why are women still engaging in hypergamy, given their recent economic or financial conditions or financial situations?
I will say, since there's all these advances, like I said, have happened, a lot more access to education, all these things like that have taken place for women, just keep growing and growing. So, we were talking about how women and men kind of stay in the same social and financial classes where they're marrying, right? If this was a large group of women who all of a sudden got all this access to now go into this other bracket, okay, because now we're over here in this bracket, because now we have the same things that these people over here have. You're no longer, most of the time, you're not relating to the people over here anymore, relating to the people over here. And if you're relating to people over here, and that's how people usually match up, because their finances are very similar, the struggles they're going through are very similar, they have lots to talk about, they're going through the same things, they're gonna be over here now. I think that's basically what it is. The women that were over here, which was a lot more women over here who didn't have access to all these things that they have access to now, have transitioned. And then all the men who are left back here, because you're like you were saying, well, some men don't think they have to do quite that much, so they'll stay over here. Well, now they're left behind, because now the women who are interacting and saying, hey, you're used to this kind of life, but I'm used to going out to these kind of dinners and stuff, and you're not even really interested in things I'm interested in, or whatever. They're not in the same brackets anymore. I think that kind of has happened. And I think they're just transitioning over, and now the men are like, well, I got to figure out how to get to those other ladies that I'm interested in, for whatever reason that is, most likely looks or financial assistance. They want to get back over in this bracket. So I think that's kind of what's happening. But I do want to remark too on how you were saying like men are going to take the easiest route. I will say I agree that people will take the easiest route, and that's just seen.
I did say people, but I did start off by saying that.
You said men. You said men don't have to work that much to get something. Why wouldn't they?
But I started off by saying that human beings will take the path of least resistance.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. If the man still heard that, because I maybe misheard it. If that's the case, yeah, everyone's going to take the easier route, and women have just been blessed throughout centuries to have been put in a position where they didn't have to do much other than be attractive, naturally, without cosmetic surgery and all that, be attractive, and be able sometimes, whatever that contractual stuff comes with when you're getting married, your riches from your father passed on, whatever, you didn't have to really do too much to get what a man to try to get with you. If you had those physical attributes and things like that, it wasn't really that hard. And this era that we're in, it's just like I said, the whole dating pool is just messed up. It's just a whole different environment. If you guys really, just everyone in general, took into factors that your environment changes everything and how humans behave. Because if you take away all those things, now you have women who are in their 40s who can get a tummy tuck after 5 kids, look like they're 30, look like they're 20, get your face redone. You're in a competing pool with women who don't even have the same things you have. Now we're all competing for the same pool of people. The only thing now is finances are really the biggest difference. Now that's the only thing you would have to switch up, was just to be financially stable. But most of the other things, women can change their whole body with $6,000. Woman at Target can go get a boob job. So now you're competing with the quote unquote thing that men say they want, is attractive women, maybe with big boobs, big ass, whatever. And they're able to get that with the surgery that takes 2 weeks to heal from. There's so many things that have changed the dynamics of when you're looking for a partner now. I think the pool's all filled with a whole bunch of stuff. You have women now are not just competing with women, they're competing with transgender women. There's a whole bunch of people in this pool, and we're worried about our finances because the only thing that can make us distinct. Everything else can be changed. I really think that's kind of where we are. You can't really distinct if everybody else can look different just by click of a button, and they can modify themselves to be catered to what you like. The only thing you have now is finance. I think it's why everyone's kind of focused on that, because if you can change that to click of a button, then we're really screwed. That's why I kind of think of it, but I think that's kind of the reason why the bracket part and just where we are, everything's just kind of changing. The pool of dating is just all different than where it was in the 60s and before that.
Hanifah, before you address this question, you talked about, I want to go back to something you said. You talked about people generally tend to marry or pair up with people who in their, they're in the same class. And you talked about homeless getting with homeless. But wouldn't you agree that if there was a man who made $40,000 and he had his own place, and he was attracted to this homeless woman, don't you think that those other homeless guys would have a harder time getting with that woman, knowing that she knows that she has a man who has more means that's interested in her?
Yeah, for a warm shower, hell yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's,
so I get where you're going with this.
Yeah, yeah, but that's hypergamy. That's right. Hypergamy at the homeless level. Because no, I'm just saying because
no. I was asking specifically how hypergamy works if everyone is on the same playing field, right? Meaning that everyone in that circle is living in tents on the street, right? So that is their social circle, right? Mm-hmm. And that's their economic class that they are around. You now are throwing a wrench in there by adding someone who is not even in the same class. That's not answering my question. That's still adding in another factor, which is you're adding in someone who's in a totally different economic class from this group that we're talking about. What I'm speaking to is if it's true that we date or we get coupled with people who tend to be in the same social and economic class as us, then we're going to have to deal with all of the poor or impoverished or homeless people in that class. I'm trying to find out how does hypergamy work within that economic class. So you get what I'm trying to say? You're adding in another factor. Well, so then now it's moving to go ahead.
Yeah, but that's kind of what hypergamy is. It's marrying up, to marry up, right? You marrying somebody who has more education, somebody who has more resources. And so let's say, for example, you're dealing with a serf, the serfs during feudal times. And, maybe there was a family that had a beautiful daughter that, she comes from a serf class. And there's a guy who, I don't know what the next class up before you get to nobility, right? So you have the nobles and whatever. And let's just say you have a nobleman who wants to marry her. Typically the parents, at least historically, how it would be, the girl probably wouldn't even have much of a choice. I mean, because the parents knew that their daughter marrying up to this guy into a noble class was going to change their life forever. It wasn't just going to change her life. It was also going to change the parents' life. And that's often why parents had more say in their kids getting married than the kids themselves.
Right. But I feel like so I'm going to concede after this because I don't know that we're going to get too far because we don't have enough time for this conversation. But what I would say to that is the example you just gave it doesn't sound like she's innately hypergamous. It sounds like her parents are, and they're projecting that onto their child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because
that happens too.
Right, no, and I know, and you've seen it in many, you've heard real life stories, you've seen it in the movies, not that, movies are programming as well, but that person always ends up meeting the love of her life in the alley while the prince sleeps in the bed. Mm-hmm. The prince that she married, that she was forced to marry, right? Yeah. The person that she really loved, she's in the back alley with the cats creeping just to go see him. So my thing is that innately hypergamy? Or is that someone being forced to participate in hypergamy? You get what I'm trying to say? That's what I'm asking, because it plays out like that all the time, where it's like, well, this is probably best for future generations, but it's like my I hate to quote R. Kelly here. It's like my mind's telling me, but my body, okay? It's like, I'm just saying, it's a lot of that happening. So I'm like, is this innate, or is it, I'm still stuck on that ebb? We got to continue the conversation.
Yeah. We'll follow up on that. So
yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, go ahead and give me your thoughts, and then I want to move on to our last segment for hypergamy, and then we'll wrap it up after that segment.
Okay, so your question, I want to make sure I speak to it because I wrote down a bunch of notes. So tell me the question one more time.
The question, the condensed version is that hey, women are doing great financially, education wise. Women are traveling. They have money. Why this need to still hold on to still engage in the practice of hypergamy?
Okay. Because, well, if for heterosexual, I'm speaking from a heterosexual perspective here, because I think that women recognize that there's a need for a male in their life outside of just provision. And that's why I keep saying, when we keep reducing men to just protection and provision, I think we do men a disservice. I think it's a setup. I think because the minute that, if you tell women that's all that men are needed for, the minute that women can replace those things and give themselves those things, I don't know what's about to happen, okay? That's why you have the conversation that went viral with the men saying, well, what do you bring to the table? Because I can make my own bed, I can cook my own food. Because once you reduce a woman's essence and presence to just that, then you start looking and saying, but wait a minute, why do I need you? So I think we need to have deeper conversations around when people are getting together on companionship and what that actually does and what part of us or what need in us is being fed by those relationships. I think there's a deeper conversation around that, but a lot of times when we talk about each other, it's in such a reductionist type of way. This is all women are good for, this is all men are good for, and so forth. But I wanted to say also too that the way that the society is going right now, okay, so let me just say this. Marrying for love is a very new concept. It's very new. I mean, anyone that reads history or that's a fairly new concept. So is monogamy. Both of them are very, very new. And let's be honest. Monogamy was an idea from the man and them. Okay? Them dudes. That was their idea. That came from a man. Okay? That was not woman pushing that. And now we could talk about that another time as to why men were pushing monogamy. Because there's the history there if we want to get into that. Okay? But marrying for love, that's a new thing. Okay? And even the way that we define love, I struggle with, right? Because I struggle with whether love is a choice or love is a feeling. I'm conflicted about that sometimes. I think the way that we talk about love is a really over-romanticized way, and not necessarily, we don't talk about it from the perspective of these are daily, difficult sometimes, sacrificial choices that we have to make daily. It's not this little mushy feeling that you get, you know what I'm saying? And there's a part of that, but I even think that that's just chemical reactions in our body that we call love.